Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back, and thank you guys so much for joining me. I have a super special guest today, Gibson Johns. Hi, Gibson. How are you?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited because, again, I've been following you for a while, and I follow your podcast. I just even sometimes when I'm sitting there doing nothing, I like to go through your Instagram too and see all of the amazing people. Seriously, like all of the amazing people that you've talked to and you've done interviews with. I mean, you're all over the board. You've even talked with some people who I know personally, like Danny Pellegrino. I don't know
hmm
Chrissy Teigen, but she was exciting to see. I mean,
Definitely.
you've had quite the adventure in your career, so I wanted to bring you on and see if we could talk to you a little bit about that.
Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah. So for anybody who's not stalking your Instagram like me when they have nothing else to do, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Gibson, and I am from Washington, D.C. I went to Michigan undergrad, and I moved to New York right after college, like almost 6 years ago now. And I started off as just like a editor for AOL.com. Generally, nothing, not in entertainment or anything. It was just kind of a front page editor. And then I switched into entertainment team, started doing interviews, writing about celebrity news. And it was we would aggregate news, but also write our own stuff. And that's how I really got into all this celebrity entertainment world, just by writing a lot and kind of sticking my neck out and saying yes to anything that came my way. I figured that, early on in your career, like it's not like if any opportunity comes to you, I think that the right thing is just to say yes. And that's sort of how I got practice. Like I would say yes to interviews with people that I'd barely heard of, but like to me, like if I could interview somebody who had 5,000 Instagram followers and what's on one TV show, I'd be eventually prepared to interview Chrissy Teigen. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's sort of how I sort of slowly built it up, was just like saying yes to things and doing favors for people. And then eventually I started getting the better names. And yeah, so I became the entertainment editor for AOL.com. And then and like a year ago or so, I switched over to a different role, and now I host a podcast out of that. So yeah, it's been really fun. It's been a ride for sure.
I love that. And when you
Yeah,
started as an editor for AOL and you kind of moved into entertainment,
yeah,
was it at first, were you kind of apprehensive about going towards entertainment, or were you like, wow, this is
no.
definitely for me?
I always knew. I mean, I've always been like a huge TV fan, huge music fan, huge movie fan. Subscribed to People Magazine. Like I've always loved celebrity entertainment. Like that's been my MO for forever, as long as I can remember. Like when I was little, I was obsessed with the Wizard of Oz. Like so, like from a very early age, like I was obsessed with just like everything to do with show business. And I didn't really. I think in my like dreams that I would want to make it my like get paid to love that kind of stuff. And it just so happened that sort of like I saw the opportunity to jump to the entertainment track, and I was like, okay, if I can combine my love of writing and just like media in general with celebrity entertainment, then like why not? Why not get paid for something you love that I would already be interested in and already be reading about and already be watching every show. So it was a natural kind of jump for me for sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
And for me, even when I was younger, it's funny because I have a lot of brothers and sisters, and they were all kind of pushed into sports and everything else. And I would sit there in my backpack under my binder. I would have a People magazine and sit there and be reading celebrity news in like fifth or sixth grade, and I would
I
just be
love it.
flipping through. And it's weird how we all I nowhere near even close to your level, but it's weird how everything kind of works its way out or works itself out, and kind of
Totally. Hmm.
we get that build up to where we are today.
Hmm.
And I admire your journey. And also now from there, you kind of branched out into your podcast. Did you
Hmm.
start your podcast by yourself?
Nope. That's part of my job, but it was kind of came out of all my experience of interviewing people for AOL, and it was just sort of like the natural next step, I think, in terms of just sort of like where I could take it. And I was doing a lot of interviews for a while. Like I was doing like 5 a week at some points, and like in different forms. Sometimes they were just over the phone. Sometimes they were in person. Sometimes they were on camera. It was just kind of like a wide range, and I got a lot of practice that way. But I kind of felt that I couldn't put everything into all of them because I was kind of being spread very thin. And just trying to do a lot. And I think at some point you'd have to kind of try to slow down. And like, for me, when I do an interview, I want to have a conversation, and I want to just like have it be like a really kind of natural back and forth, and it relatively casual, and make the person feel really comfortable. And sometimes when you have 10 minutes with somebody, you can't really get to that level. And so I think with a podcast and having one episode a week, you get way more in depth with them. You talk for 30 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes, and you talk about what they're to promote or what they have going on at the moment. But then I can also ask about their whole life and like how they got to where they were. And to me, that's the interesting part, is just learning more about them and maybe asking things that you wouldn't have time for in a normal setting, but and that will kind of get you to understand these people differently than you would otherwise. So that's what I like to do with the podcast, and just kind of get in depth with people and hear, because sometimes I have people on that like I know what they're doing now, but I don't know how they got to where they were. Like I can read up as much as I want, but like sometimes people haven't asked them those questions before in past interviews. So it's been fun.
No, and that's something that, I mean, especially myself, I guess I always try to ask the questions that haven't been asked, only because we watch these interviews, right? And you don't want to go on and ask the exact same questions that maybe someone, a correspondent from E asked, or somebody over here from Bravo. I mean, because then you're giving the same interview. So I think it's really interesting that you're trying to dive into what we don't know about the person. And like you said, 10 minutes, I mean, sometimes jumping on with whoever it is you're interviewing and maybe their PR on there, 10 minutes goes by like this. You don't have
it goes by really quickly.
Yeah.
And I think also sometimes in those scenarios, you ask the couple questions that you're supposed to ask and whatever. And then sometimes even I would find myself sort of having an ulterior motive because I wanted a certain headline out of it, or I wanted to ask like the one question that like everyone really wants to ask. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes like, yeah, it's great to get that answer. But I didn't really like going into interviews like with like a different motive. Like I just wanted like that one quote, about like whatever is actually going on in their life. And to me, like, I don't think I think that a lot of the time the talent or the celebrity like anticipates that, and they have their guard up because of that. And so I think like the way to maybe get that answer in a more natural way, or even just not even get to that point. I'm not always in it for the tea, but like you have to kind of start with a more conversational, like, and show that you're really interested in them. And not just kind of like a really generic surface level situation. So I don't know.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
So I am curious though, for your We Should Talk podcast, do you have a favorite person, favorite talent, or individual celebrity that you've had on your podcast that maybe you were surprised by, or that the conversation kind of blew your mind?
I mean, so the podcast is still relatively new. I only launched it in October. But I don't know if anybody's like blown my mind yet. I would say my favorite episode so far, there's probably two. One was with Danny Pellegrino, just because we have a lot in common, and we had a lot to sort of shared experience that we could talk about. And we had never really, like, we had met in person once, and we were social media friends, but we had never had a full conversation and just sort of like talk to one another before. And it was really fun to finally have that moment with him. And I also loved having Ashley from the Real Housewives of Potomac on, because I've been interviewing her every single season since Potomac started, and we just have a fun rapport, and I love to laugh with her, and I think she's really funny, and I think she's a top tier housewife as well. So she was fun to have on as well, because she's so open as well.
I really enjoyed her this past season. I feel like she's one of those housewives too that's constantly growing and evolving through her years, and not just staying that same kind of.
Absolutely. I think being a mother totally changed her. And I think that I just think that she sets a precedent for everyone else in terms of how open she is and how much she's willing to share with people. And I think a lot of her peers, not necessarily on Potomac, but like on other franchises, could learn from Ashley for sure.
All right. Okay, so say we're not talking about the We Should Talk podcast. You obviously met some pretty incredible people.
Yeah.
Can you say that you have a favorite from any interviews or maybe interactions that you've had throughout your career?
I usually come back to Chrissy Teigen, because I think that she has a lot to live up to. I think a lot of people consider her to be sort of like that best friend, that person who's like just like super casual and funny and says whatever that's on their mind. And I think that sometimes with celebrities who are like that, it's unclear whether or not, are they turning that on and off? Is that really how they are? Is that just like their public facing brand? But with Chrissy, I've interviewed her 3 times in person, a couple other times over the phone. And like every time she is exactly how she is on Twitter and on Instagram. That's just like who she is. And she she just kind of like says, again, whatever comes out, like there's not that much of a filter there. And the last time I interviewed her, which was like right before the pandemic and like maybe last February, I sort of like got through what I wanted to ask, like for the first however much time I had with her. And I think I had like 3 minutes left. And I was like, you know what? Chrissy's a Bravo girl like me. Let's just talk about Bravo. So I just asked her like a ton of different Bravo questions about whatever was going on at the time. And I just felt like I was talking to a friend about like what was happening in the Bravo universe. And I think she appreciated it because nobody else that day is just like taking the time to just ask about TV shows that don't even involve her. But yeah, it's just fun when you can really kind of like feel like you're shooting the shit with somebody, and she's definitely that person that you think she is.
Yeah, and of course, we see her whether she's tweeting about The Bachelor or TLC's 90 Day Fiance or Bravo. It is something that's very relatable for all of us because we're like, oh wow, that's one of our favorite people, and she loves the same stuff that we do.
Yeah. She's a really fun one. There have been other like more surreal ones, I would say. And sometimes those happen like those would happen on red carpets. Like when I used to do red carpets, like those are really passing interactions. Like I'm trying to think of some of the red carpet ones that I've done, like Reese Witherspoon, Casey Musgraves. I'm trying to think. Oh, I would say also a top one for me was Khloe Kardashian. Last, I guess 2 summers ago now, she was doing a joint press thing with Scott because they had like their spin-offs back to back on E! That summer. And I interviewed them both at the same time. I flew to LA for 8 minutes with them. And like I had 8 minutes with Khloe and Scott. And that was just like a big moment because to me, it's like, whether you like them or you don't like them, I happen to like them. The Kardashians are sort of like as big as it gets in the celebrity world. And so to me, that felt like sort of like a career milestone in some ways because it was just like a really, and she was really sweet. And, she had a lot going on in her life at the time outside of, her TV show. I think that was the same year as the Jordan and Tristan stuff. And she was just very strong and fun and really sweet. And I would say that's definitely up there too.
I mean, I feel like especially the Kardashians, they're so trained in order to like kind of turn it off for press and business. Like those women,
very professional. I've always heard about that about all of them. All the Kardashians, the 3 oldest Kardashians, is that they're very professional. They're usually on time and they're very kind to everyone that they're working with. So, and that held up for me in my experience with Khloe. So that's all I can really speak on.
All right. So I did want to ask you a few more questions while I have you. I know that you kind of eased your way in after becoming an editor at AOL and kind of going into this entertainment industry. But when you first started being featured on camera, was that experience hard for you? I mean, was it?
It's definitely, I'm definitely not trained on camera. I didn't go to journalism school. I didn't follow that track. I honestly just sort of fell into what I do. And I think in some ways that makes me a little bit more casual and relatable when I'm on camera. I don't think I'm like super polished necessarily. And I sort of I kind of like told myself that it was okay to be like that. Cause I think I would go to a junket and I would see all these people that were like, clearly like they'd had like a broadcast journalism background, or they went to journalism school and they were like super primped up and what have you. And nothing against that, but that's not necessarily like the style of interview that I have to watch. And I love when things are a little bit less polished and a little bit more conversational and casual. And so that's sort of the approach that I've tried to take with it. And again, like I knew that I had done interviews off camera with people of kind of all levels already by the time I was doing on camera stuff. And I think the only extra thing that I had to sort of like remind myself was when you ask the question and the other person is talking, you have to really be cognizant of what you're doing with your responses, whether you're kind of giving audio responses or just more of a physical reaction to what they're saying to not interrupt them, or not like move too much, or you make sure that your like kind of resting face is not like that you're aware of like what your expression is at all times, honestly. Those are the things I started to think about a lot, and it's definitely a learning curve. And I think, I think the hardest is when it's live. I would say like when it's, again, with Chloe and Scott, for example, it was an 8 to 10 minute sit down on camera. I took that footage back. We had it edited, what have you, and then we published it. I used to do a bunch of build series interviews back when those were happening, and those were all live. And I didn't know how many people were watching. I didn't know when the camera was on me or not. And so that's when you really have to be on high alert about how you're holding yourself, what your posture is. And so it was definitely hard a lot, but it's also just, you have to have fun with it. And so I try not to overthink it too much either.
All right. No, and honestly,
Yeah.
I think that's great information for anyone who would be trying to break into this industry and do exactly what you do, because these are some of the little things that you might not necessarily think about until you're in that situation. And that's obviously something that you've had to learn and grow to be more aware of. So I like that. I respect that. Would you say that you have any advice off the top of your head for anyone who might be inspired by you and your podcast and your journey getting to where you are today? What would be your best advice?
I would say one, like, don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, like we had never met before, and you just reached out, and we just were talking, and you asked me onto your show. I've had calls and things with people that I've never met before, and they were just sort of interested in breaking into the industry. And I think reaching out to people that you respect and watch and letting them know that. And, if you ever have any time to spare, like, and you want to email back and forth or hop on a 15-minute call, like, I usually respond to stuff like that. So that's something that I think it shows initiative, and I think it shows that, like, you're really serious about breaking into it. And I also would just say, it's like, it's really, you're not going to get your dream job right away. And so, you might take a gig that might not be the on-air reporter role right away, or the writer, the editor role right away. But, like, if you can get in the door by doing something, to the side, or that's just like, or that's connected to what you want to do, you can eventually maybe get there. I think the hardest part is getting in the door. But I think that, I didn't start at my company doing what I was doing, but I eventually found my way there by sticking my neck out and expressing interest in those things. So there's always a way. I just think that, I think some of us, like, especially I think maybe the younger generation, like, thinks that things should happen really quickly. And that's not always the case. Like, you do have to work for it, and you do have to really, you can't assume things are going to happen to you. You have to, speak up and try to make that happen for yourself.
All right. No, I appreciate you saying that too, because, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It is, and I don't want to single anybody out, and please, nobody attack me in the comments, but it is sort of that younger generation mentality. I'm only 27, but also I know a lot of people who are younger than me breaking into it, and they're like, yes, I want to be Jason Kennedy. And I'm like, that's not how this works.
And I think and it's hard, because I think even I see people, like, blowing up on social media just like from one video or something like that. And it's hard not to compare yourself to that and be like, oh, like, I want that to happen to me. And I want my career to blow up that quickly. And if they can do it, I can do it. And, like, yeah, sure. Like, go for it. But those are rare moments. And so, like, you can't get discouraged, I think, when it doesn't happen right away, is basically what I'm trying to say, I would say.
Right. And, I think, just to sum it up, you're saying take initiative and work hard.
Yeah.
And that will show.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
So I do want to ask you, though, for a normal workday, for people who might think that, okay, this guy goes on a podcast, and sometimes, people see YouTubers who go on and do interviews, and they think, oh, okay, you do 2-3 interviews. That's not hard. This guy has a cake job. What is an average workday like for you?
I'll speak to, like, what an average workday was when I was an editor, because I think that's more applicable here for AOL. But the interviews were sort of the icing on the cake. I think, like, my job was really to just track celebrity news. And so every day I would come in, and I would already have been on Twitter probably. And if anything huge happened, I would have gotten some sort of push notification, or it would have been on my email. And then I had my sites that I checked every single morning for sort of the updates on what happened overnight. So obviously Twitter, go to People, go to Us Weekly, go to Page Six, go to Daily Mail, get the lay of the land. And then we would either, write up original articles around those things, and sort of divvying up around the team. And I would assign people things, or we would use like partner content. And so it was basically, that was like my general day, was like tracking news. So if something happened, if somebody got divorced, or somebody died, or a baby was born, or there was a big wedding, like it was on me to get that covered. And I didn't go to journalism school, and I wasn't necessarily like prepared for like the news cycle, and things happen so quickly and so often, especially in the celebrity world. There's always something going on. And so that was definitely a learning curve to like kind of the speed at which things go is takes some getting used to. But then on top of that was sort of like, okay, like if there were interview opportunities that were coming in, I would try to schedule them in if I knew I would have the time. And on top of that, I mean, so after an interview, you have to transcribe it and create an article around it, and figure out, like what sort of like your lead, what's your angle from this interview. If there was a video component, you had to get that edited and work on sort of like all of that. That takes a long time. So there's definitely a lot of work that goes into it. I think people who make it look easy on camera, especially, impress me, because it's not easy, and there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. I would spend a lot of time, if I was doing an interview, I would spend a lot of time researching that person, making sure I was up to date on what they had going on, figuring out all my questions. Every interview I do have my list of questions that in sort of like a natural order as they go. But you also have to be open to, if things take a left turn in the interview, go with it, I guess. Yeah. So that's sort of how my day-to-day was for a long time. And there are other things that I was in charge of as well, but that's sort of as it applies here. So there's definitely more behind the scenes than I think people realize, for sure.
You have your hands full, or had your hands full when
you
were
exactly. Yeah.
an editor. Yeah, no. Wow. So you've grown so much in your career. And I know, again, I don't have you. I don't have you all night, so I'm just gonna respect your time. And I just want to ask you one more question before we let you go. Obviously, things have kind of taken natural turns for you to get to where you are now, right? You probably weren't expecting all of the fun ventures that you're a part of, but what would be your absolute dream job in this industry, if you had one that came to mind?
I mean, I think it's probably a dream that a lot of people share, but I think there are so many people trying to do what we're doing, I think, and everyone wants kind of their own platform, their own show, their own whatever. And I would love that. I would love to have like my own, something that gets even bigger and where I can do what I'm doing, but maybe with a more substantial platform, or whatever that looks like. But I think ultimately, like whether it's my own thing or working on somebody else's thing or whatever, I think it's just about sort of like continuing to find like how my voice fits into like the overall landscape. Because again, I think there's a lot of times what happens is, or what I notice is that like people like think there's sort of like the self-importance a little bit that comes with like our industry, and like people like it's like all about them and sort of like what they have to say. And I don't know, I think that sometimes what gets lost is like there's actually, with all these different channels and all these different outlets for people, like there is actually room for everyone on the internet or on TV or whatever. Like there are so like, think of how many shows are on so many different platforms and so many different ways to watch things. Like all of those places like want some sort of like talking head show or news show or celebrity breakdown or whatever it is. Like I think that there's room in so many different places for a lot of different people. So I think it's just finding my spot in that. I know that's pretty vague, but I again, especially because this industry is changing so often, it's like it's so hard to predict what it'll even look like in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, is everything going to be on YouTube? Is everything going to be on a new platform that doesn't exist yet? Is everything going to be on TikTok? I don't know. Like, who knows what it looks like? And so I think part of it is just rolling the punches. And like, I didn't really have a 5-year plan 5 years ago, and I'm really happy with where I am right now. And so I think there's a lot of merit in having a plan. There's also a lot of merit and also kind of just going with the flow. So somewhere between those two is sort of how I approach things.
I like that. And I like when you said, is everything going to be on YouTube? Is it going to be on TikTok? It kind of gives you like whiplash if you really try to think about it.
It really does. So I think just kind of staying a little bit in the moment is beneficial. But I mean, I don't know. It's like it's so hard to predict. It really is.
Right. We just figure it out as we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Gibson, again, I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Of course. And honestly, this was a pleasure, especially for me. I feel like I learned a few things here, and also anybody who's watching, it's inspiring. Your story is inspiring, and it's just fun to talk to people and see how they get to where they are and what that journey looks like. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me and sharing that. This was awesome.
Of course. It was so much fun.
All right. Well, Gibson, we'll see you next time. And hey, if you ever want to come back, we would love to have you.
Totally. And if anybody's listening, please subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We have weekly episodes. I have some sort of celebrity talent on there every week, and we go deep. So they're fun to listen to. So subscribe if you're interested.
And where can we find you on Instagram?
Gibsonoma, Gibsonoma.
And I'm not kidding, guys. If you're not doing anything, go check out his photos because he has some awesome people on there. Especially, I freaked out when I saw Chrissy Teigen. I fangirled over it. So go check out Gibson. And Gibson, we will see you next time.
Love it. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. All right, guys, that was awesome. So Gibson Johns, what a talent. You guys have to go follow him. Check out his podcast. We Should Talk. I'm sorry. My voice is gone right now. Go check out his podcast. We Should Talk. And yeah, what a great time. If you guys haven't already, go ahead, hit that like button. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. My voice is gone. I'll see you guys next time.